Thank you. We really wanted to understand, a lot of my work is more looking at the application side of things. How do you really apply this technology? How do you monitor it once it's been installed? And we had the opportunity to work with a company that has a AI-driven 222 module, USHO modules in them, and they wanted to train their AI to be able to recognize when there was a human face in the field of view of the cameras that were built into the fixtures themselves. And they wanted to also understand how well that was, the algorithm inside the AI was keeping the exposure of occupants in the room within the ICFUST 2022 limits. And so one of the ways that medical facilities work on training scenarios is to do simulations. We have throughout the whole Mount Sinai system different sim labs that really look at training surgeons on certain procedures and things of this nature. And so we contacted the director of our simulation technologies at Mount Sinai and had him develop a scenario where we could have actors come into a live patient room and do various procedures like they would do on a normal basis and monitor this. And one of the things that we have been impressed by is a dosing film that has been developed by David Welch at Columbia University. So we trialed this in our simulation. So that's just a little bit of a background of what we're going to talk about today. So it was trying to understand how well the technology could actually work and keep the exposure limits within the ICFUST limits. And so, a little hard to see from this side of things. But, all right, can you hear me? All right, good. And so we wanted to really look at this by doing a couple different scenarios. You can see here up in the corner of the room that the lights were positioned so they would come behind the patient in the room so they wouldn't be directly exposing the eyes. It's more or less to really, we were looking at surface decontamination in the space in another part of the study that I won't go into today. But that's the way the lights were oriented. And each one of the modules could be individually triggered by the AI. So if you were having too much exposure, the module would turn itself off. And some of our early testing showed that with three of these modules in there, it was too much, and so we had one of the emitters turned off for this simulating exercise. And so you'll see a couple of patients went through like a physical therapy session, had various people coming into the room, and they wore badges of this film to be able to show how people moving through the space accumulated dose from the 222. And it's a very good way of getting that real-time monitoring of these types of systems. And here you can see one of the simulated patients had the film on the cap, surgical cap, and then you can see also that we had these goggles that they would protect the eyes, but then we put the film here to kind of simulate what potentially an eye exposure might have. And then there was film badges on the shoulder of these various actors in this space to look at maybe what kind of UV might be in the breathing zone. And so these are ways of kind of looking at different types of exposures. When people were going in and out of the room, their film badges or their PPE were put into bags so that they wouldn't be exposed by the other types of light sources in the environment. So every time they'd go into the room, they'd put those on so that the medical people coming through the simulation would be able to get the accumulation of just from the 222 in the room. And we ran this simulation for like a 2-hour period of time. Here we go. Can you see that? All right, this is, I'll talk a little bit what they're doing. They're asking about food service, and so the patients were going into the space. You might notice that, I guess it's repeating itself on a loop, but you'll notice up on the shoulder, this film badge is turning a darker blue color because of the longer exposure. And this actor had just one on the goggles. There's another patient over here in the other room. And the way the technology was working is both of the fixtures were able to talk to each other so they could keep a cumulative dose in the space from exceeding the ACGIH level as well. And then we had curtains pulling, closing, people would get up and go to the bathroom, and et cetera, et cetera. So those were some of the things that we were able to try within our simulation. All right, thank you for that. So we just wanted to show you a little bit more realistically what was happening within the room. We did a GoPro for the full 2 hours so we could look at the estimated time. And we had a schedule on how many minutes each person was in the room. And you'll notice we did a common dosing technology is these dots, these various dots that are good in many ways, but they're limited if you want to have a longer or a larger dose over a longer period of time, which is the advantages of these film badges. And you can see that the darker badges represented the patients that had the longest exposure in the room versus some of the lighter colors here. So that gives you kind of a visual indication of some of the differences. And here you can see the amounts of time that were exposed for, like the RN that went into the room, the patient representative, patient 1, patient 2, the EMT, medical doctor. You can see various times that each one of the people were in the room. And then what the dose was over a 2-hour period of time, and if you multiply that to a full 8 hours, and they divided it for the various limit for the eye or for the skin, you can see that it was just a fraction of the allowable ACGIH dose that each one of these was able to give. So it gave kind of an indication of a time-weighted average that you might expect in a typical medical scenario. And of course, doing this maybe in a real-time room where you could measure how often nurses went in, doctors went in, you could get more of a further estimate of time that people spend in the room and potential exposures that they would have from this. And if you plot it out as far as where they were over the 2-hour period of time, this lower cluster of people are the medical personnel going in and out of the room, and of course up at the upper level would be the patients. But the level is very minimal, 10 millijoules. And then if you look at the hat, which would have probably the closest exposure, it was more up into the 30 to 25 level for the patients. So it gives you kind of a range of what you might anticipate. And some of this will depend on how you orient the lights in the room, whether they're directly down or some of them are placed on an angle. And all these things are things to consider when you're trying to apply this technology. And this is what it looked like on the shoulder. So you get a high level of UV at the patient level versus the people coming in and out of the room. And as far as the emitters, they showed that there was a cumulative dose of 20.1 millijoules for one bed B, and then it was 33 for bed A and 33.6 for bed B. And part of that is how the fixture was oriented within the area. And you can see that the emitters, some were on for a long period of time, and the others were turned off intermittently as well. And then in the bathroom where the patients weren't in there all the time, they were able to stay on most of the time. So you could have, in a sense, if you're trying to do continuous cleaning, you could have a higher level of irradiation in the bathroom because of less time that people would be spending in those areas as well. So it kind of gives you a little bit of an idea if you're trying to plan dosing for surface cleaning, how much percentage of the time you might be able to have UV on in the space and still keep it within the ACGIH limits. And then this is a comparison between the fixture and what the film was saying. So there was a pretty good correlation here, somewhat higher at this level, and then for bed B it was very close. We also had a radiometer to try to give us some idea as to what that would say, but the bed was moved up and down during some of the scenarios, so some of the measurements were blocked by the way the activity was going on in the room, so that wasn't a good, we'd have to reposition it for another time, but for a pilot study, I think this was a very good use of the technology. I think the film dosimetry is a very good way of getting active monitoring going on into spaces, and I think we could learn a lot from this in various applications as they go forward. I think it could really give us insights as to how to plan these types of systems.